My name is Ogechi Ogu. I'm a legal practitioner. I am glad to have all of you here today on this particular session. Remember, we are trying to build skills, we are trying to build capacity, we are trying to share knowledge, experience, and skills regarding engagement with governance issues. As young people, it is important that you know your rights and your responsibilities so that you are able to engage effectively with the government. Now, this particular session is all about what are your fundamental human rights and civil liberties. So I'm going to take you through what fundamental human rights is, take you through what are your rights as they are contained in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and your own personal responsibility regarding the protection and promotion of human rights. So you are welcome to this session. Glad to have all of you. You're welcome once again. I will take you through the course content. In this particular session, we're going to look at the general course introduction, what is human rights, categorization of human rights, and the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, types of human rights, characteristics of human rights, importance of human rights, your rights as a Nigerian, violations of human rights, how can rights be violated, protection of human rights, where to get help when human rights is violated, what you need to do when your right is violated, civil liberties, and we will take you through some review questions. So you can see that the session is trying to break down everything about fundamental human rights in the language, in a manner that everyone will understand. It is important to us that you flow with this. So we are going to break everything down. Now, in terms of introducing the course, human rights, what is this about? Human rights is a set of principles and standards that promote the respect and dignity of human beings. I want you to take the keywords respect, dignity, and I would like to refer you to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 1. Please kindly go back and read that up. You will have a deeper understanding of what we mean by respect and dignity of human beings. Now, human rights as a concept is modern, but that does not mean that it started with maybe 1945, what happened after the First World War and the rest of them, and how the world came together to see how the rights of citizens can be promoted. Human rights has always been there. It's as old as humanity. It is all about promoting principles that speak to equality, non-discrimination, and fairness. That is to say, we are all equal, born equal as human beings. As long as you came into this world as a human being, you have as much rights as every other human being. And it's all about recognizing our freedom and to make choices, to read about our lives, and to develop our potentials as human beings. This is particularly critical to you as young persons. You need this awareness. As youth, you should be in the know of what your rights are, and you should be able to participate effectively in governance processes. So that is why we are here. Now, what is human rights? Many of you must have heard, human rights is human rights. Now, I want us to take this, defining human rights from two perspectives by looking at what is human and looking at what is right. Of course, when you hear human, the human there is human beings, not animals. So the human is about human being like you and I. And what is the right? The right is entitlement, not privilege. It has to be clear. Rights, that which accrue to you, simply because you are a human being. So it's not about privilege. Let me give you an example. You say, as a small child, as a young child, You are entitled. It is your entitlement to be fed by parents that have brought you to this world. It is your human rights. Now, on the other hand, when the type of food changes and becomes maybe buffet, then it is privilege. So you cannot say that your parents did not give you pounded egg in the morning and you turn around to say they have abused your rights. Bread and tea is enough. So see, that is why human rights, the rights we are talking about is entitlement. It's not about privileges. Now, we can summarize the meaning of human rights into this. Human rights are entitlements that accrue to one by virtue of one's existence as a human being, which means human rights refer to the basic rights and freedom that all human beings have. It talks about rights that are derived from the inherent dignity and worth of the human person. Human rights are also rights which belong to all people at all times, in all situations, and in all societies. So whether you are a Nigerian, you are a Chinese, you are from America, you have human rights. The basic requirement is for you to be a human being. And being that it applies to everyone, no matter where you are, no matter your location, no matter your nationality, means that you cannot say that I have a right as a Nigerian within the territory of Nigeria. And maybe when you travel to Ghana, the right will fly away. No. Wherever you are, your right subsists. It's still your human rights. Now, the human rights principle is based on the fact that certain rights and freedom are fundamental to human existence. And as such, importance should be attached to the respect for the dignity and worth of each person. Your right to life, for you to be a human being and be going around, you should be alive now. So it is fundamental that you should have right to life. If not, life will cease and every other thing will go. So there must be that respect and dignity for the worth of each person. Some people can take it to the level of religion and tell you that man was even created, the ultimate creator, God himself, created man in his own image. So that gives us what? That's why you see on the streets, at times a cat will be killed by a moving vehicle or a goat. You see every other vehicle running it over. But when it comes to a human being, once such a thing happens, people stop. They stop because of the dignity and worth of each person. You see that something must be done to remove that person. Something must be done, even in death, to cover up a human being that may have been killed in an accident. Human rights are not gifts. They are not privileges given as a government or person in authority may deem fit. And they cannot be taken away because of any reason. And this points to the fact that human rights is inalienable. It is not given by anybody, and it cannot be taken by anybody, even by yourself. That's why a parent cannot even kill his own child. That is why you, within our laws, you cannot take your own life. Attempted suicide is a crime, is documented, is coded in our criminal law. So you can now see the value of the Nigerian Supreme Court in Ransom Kitty versus Attorney General of the Federation. I would like you to read that up. I would equally like you to read up the Supreme Court's decision in Asometa versus Yesufu. They are quite critical to your understanding. So there are court decisions trying to tell us what this is all about. Fundamentally, human rights are deriving from natural law. They are there, they are inalienable, they are just about you being a human being, and automatically you have the rights. Now, human rights are categorized. We have two category, under the at international level, we have two common categorization of human rights, and these are civil and political rights and economic, social, and cultural rights. Now, the civil and political rights are enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and further established in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The economic, social, and cultural rights are enshrined still in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I would like you to learn something going forward regarding these two: civil and political rights, economic, social, and cultural rights. Actually, the two covenants were signed onto as a treaty on the same day in December of 1966. But something happened along the line, and it seems now that there is division between the two because the civil and political rights are contained in Chapter 4 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, while the economic and social cultural rights are in Chapter 2. And they are telling us that the civil and political rights are justiciable by virtue of Section 46 of the Constitution, while the other one, the economic, social, and cultural rights, are not justiciable. But you see that the rights that are within the economic, social, and cultural rights and that of civil and political rights, you cannot differentiate them. You need one for actualization of the other. Example, you need rights to food. You must eat food before you can live. And you have this in a different place and the other one in a different place. So this is to prepare your mind for the engagement with governance regarding balancing the rights of the people. Now, human rights and the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, fundamental human rights are provided for in Chapter 4 of the Constitution. The chapter covers mostly civil and political rights and embody principles and standards that can enable citizens activate positive participation in democratic governance. The denial or infringement of these fundamental rights of an individual can be subject of adjudication in court. At least this is where you see you have right of association, you have right to vote and be voted for. It must, however, be noted that these rights, except right to the dignity of human beings and right not to be tortured and not, that all these rights, apart from rights to dignity of human beings and rights not to be tortured, or what we call prohibition of torture, then all these other ones are not absolute, and as such can be restricted or derogated from in certain circumstances. What I mean is that all the fundamental human rights that are contained in the Constitution, especially sections 33 down to section 46, when you look at them, not all of them will you say are automatic, you cannot restrict them, except the one, section 34, which speaks to dignity of human beings and rights not to be tortured. Now, how do you derogate or limit the rights of a person? Rights of an individual can be limited in the interest of defense, in the interest of public safety, in the interest of public order, in the interest of public morality or public health, or for the purpose of protection of the rights and freedoms of other persons. What this means, you can see practical example in what happened during COVID-19 pandemic, when there was a restriction on movement. That was in the interest of public health. And everybody stayed indoors because there was a regulation to that effect. And everybody almost complied. And those that did not comply, you remember what happened to them. But nobody can say because there is war, because there is conflict, because people are demonstrating, that they will now come and torture them. Under no circumstance can anybody be tortured. It's not permissible under any circumstance. It is also important to note that the economic, social, and cultural rights as provided for in Chapter 2 of the Constitution are also very important in the fulfillment of the rights of individuals in the country. The civil and political rights cannot be efficiently or effectively promoted protected, or fulfilled without the economic, social, and cultural rights. It is therefore important to put this to mind in discussions around democratic and governance principles. Let us engage our leaders. They should get this into their head that they cannot separate these rights because they balance one another. Now, what are the types of human rights? There is right to life, section 33, right to dignity of human person, section 34, right to personal liberty, section 35, right to fair hearing, section 36, right to private and family life, section 37, right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, section 38, right to freedom of expression and the press, section 39, right to peaceful assembly and association, section 40, right to freedom of movement, section 41, right to freedom from discrimination, section 42, right to acquire and own immovable property anywhere in Nigeria, section 43. Section 44, as you go on, you will now see those restrictions and what you can do in the circumstance of abuse of your rights. But we'll still get to that towards the end of this particular session. Now, what are the socio-economic rights? We picked a few of them. Right to work in a safe environment for a fair wage. This is a right, your socio-economic right, which nobody can take away. If not, if you are not allowed to choose to work in a safe environment with a fair wage, you may be reinventing slavery. And you should note that there are other national laws that support this particular provision, like the labor law. You cannot give somebody a position or a job without telling the person the conditions of the work, especially in terms of remuneration. And there should be wage that is commensurate to the work somebody is doing. And the environment of the work has to be safe. You cannot place people maybe where they will be exposed to radioactive, whatever it is, that may cause them, cause health challenges to them, or place them in situations where they are exposed to danger. That's why in certain circumstances, it's expected that there must be insurance for people working in certain environments. Now, we equally have right to access medical care, including mental health care. Good. I would like you to go and Google the National Mental Health Act, which was recently enacted last year. Check it up so that you know your rights regarding mental health and other things. Now, the right to accessible education. You wonder, you go on the street in the morning and you see children hawking on the street. These are children that are entitled to primary to JSS 3 education. Even the Child's Rights Act makes provision for this. But you keep wondering, why are children moving about without getting education? We now have rights to adequate food, clothing and housing, affordable sanitation and clean water, right to take part in cultural life, right to enjoy the benefits of scientific progress. Now, what are the characteristics of human rights? Number one, human rights is universal. Human rights are applicable to every human being, even beyond national borders. That's the example I gave you. That you have rights in Nigeria does not mean that when you enter Ghana or enter UK, your rights will be taken away. No, your human rights is still there. Human rights are the same for all human beings, regardless of sex, regardless of race, regardless of religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin. We are all born free. Just take it away. We are all born free and equal in dignity and rights. When you check the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that's Article 1, you will see towards the end where it says, and we should treat one another in the spirit of brotherhood. And that spirit of brotherhood is inclusive of protection of the rights of others. Because there are some persons that are not able, vulnerable ones, that are not able to protect themselves. Now, take it up. that you have a responsibility not only to protect your own rights, but to equally protect the rights of your neighbors. And you can do this through different means. Now, human rights are inalienable. They are not subject to being taken away from or given away by even the rights bearer. You are a rights bearer. You cannot give away even your human rights. Nobody, not even a government, can take it away. You can remember Fela's song, which says, human rights na my property. So no government will come and boast that they are the ones giving anybody human rights. It's not true. So they cannot take what they have not given. Indivisible. They cannot be separated from one another in terms of their applicability. For example, one cannot be said to have right to one type of human rights and yet not have right to other types of human rights. They are interdependent, interrelated. Human rights are interdependent because the fulfillment of one or exercise of one may not be had without the realization of the other. Human rights are linked to one another, and the violation of one often leads to the violation of others. Example is violation of right to health or food or shelter may invariably lead to the violation of right to life. What is the importance of human rights? Human rights have values that enable us to enjoy freedom and liberty. We need human rights to ensure freedom, justice, and peace. We need human rights to prevent barbarous acts. If not, you would have seen people that will tell you that food, 1 kilo of food, meat is 3,000 or 4,000 naira or 5,000 naira. I cannot afford it, so I decided to eat my neighbor's son. Prevent tyranny or oppression. There are so many people that are willing, the high and mighty, that are willing at any time to crush those that they perceive to be vulnerable. But human rights says no. That is a huge importance of human rights. Human rights promotes development and friendly relations between nations. If another country is sure that their rights, the rights of their citizens will be protected in another country, good enough. There will be better relationship between them. There won't be any challenge. And such nations will be willing to come and invest in our own country and will be glad to invest in other nations where our own rights are equally protected. So all these things are critical to the progress and development of our nation. And it is very important that young persons like you are aware of this and ensure that you promote the promotion of human rights and ensuring that the government does the needful regarding this, because our progress and development is dependent on how much we protect and promote the rights of individuals in the country. Now, the promotion, protection, and fulfillment of human rights is very crucial in a democratic society. Human rights have intrinsic and instrumental values. Intrinsic values relate to the value of freedom and liberty in themselves. Everyone wants freedom and liberty for the values they add to life. There are also instrumental values which relate to what human rights enable us to achieve. If you live a life of freedom and liberty and complying with the protection of rights of others, there is tendency for you to develop and achieve high good things. Now, some of the important benefits human rights have are human rights ensure people's basic needs are met. It ensures that there's protection of vulnerable groups from abuse. Human rights allow people to stand up to societal corruption. Human rights encourage freedom to express oneself and make decisions. Human rights encourage equal work opportunities. Human rights give people access to education. Human rights protect the environment. Human rights provide a universal standard that holds governments accountable. That is why you have what we call rule of law. If not, without accountability, People will just take it that, I am in power, I am the government, I can do and undo. No, you are held accountable because of the principles and standards of human rights. Now, what are your rights as a Nigerian citizen? As a Nigerian, you are a right bearer and have several rights enlisted in section 33 to 46 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. As amended, we have enlisted some of these rights. These rights have been outlined earlier in this presentation. It's also important to highlight the fact that some of these rights accrue also to non-Nigerians because, as earlier stated, human rights are universal. So it is important. Now, some Nigerians are equally rights bearers and at the same time, duty bearers, like our security agents. So they have their rights as citizens, they equally have rights because they are equally duty bearers in terms of having the responsibility to fulfill, to first promote, protect, and fulfill rights of citizens. Now, human rights violation or abuse is an action which directly or indirectly deprives an individual of his or her human rights. Violation of human rights happen in almost all societies and cultures, but the levels of violations differ from country to country, and states have the responsibility to ensure promotion, protection, and fulfillment of the human rights of individuals. In the society, violation of rights takes different forms, such as denial and deprivation of rights, and infliction of harm on a person. Amnesty International has done well in terms of highlighting some of these violations. In its 2009 World Report, Amnesty International reported that persons have been tortured or abused at least in 81 countries. That in 54 countries, there are several individuals that face unfair trials, and in about 77 countries, there's restriction in the freedom of expression of several persons. You remember what happened to Ahmad Jalingo, and several other media personalities complain, about their rights being infringed upon because they are writing to expose what is happening in the country, and this is not right. How can rights be violated? Rights can be violated in various ways, such as rights can be violated by a state and persons in authority when the benefit that they are obligated to offer to a person is denied the person without legal justification. Rights can also be violated by persons in authority when they deprive a person of his or her entitlement or cause harm to such a person. Rights can be violated vicariously when people in authority who bear the responsibility to protect and defend the rights of a person fail to deliver on such responsibility. When persons are not paid their salaries, are not paid their pension, their rights have been abused. When persons that are entitled to education are not given this education by the state, their rights have been violated. But most importantly, when there is, some persons are targeted, security is compromised, and you are not able to, as the government, to deliver on this in terms of protecting the citizens, the rights of these persons have equally been violated. Human rights can be violated by private persons who do things to harm the legitimate interests of another person or deprive another person of his or her legitimate interests. Example is when a person detains another person contrary to his or her will or invades the privacy of another person. Sometimes private persons may violate the rights of a person with the support or enablement of government official. Now, protection of human rights is very important to promote, protect, and fulfill human rights. The primary obligation to respect and promote human rights lies on the states. It's the states that sign on to all these treaties. They are the ones that are members of the UN. The responsibility of respect and protection of human rights rests mostly on institutions and mechanisms established by government and government officials. When there is a violation of human rights, it is the responsibility of the government to step in to stop further violations of the rights and provide remedies for such violations. The remedies may be in the form of compensation or punishment for the violation. It can equally come in both ways. You remember what happened after NSAS, that panels were set up in cases where the victims, it was established that the victims suffered, they are tortured and things like that. Some of them, they are given a paid compensation by the government. And this has not stopped the process of accountability for the perpetrators in terms of their prosecution. That's why Nigerians are still waiting for the prosecution of these persons that have perpetrated torture against persons. Example, in that case of the 2020 NSAS campaign. Everybody who violates human rights, including the government, needs to be held responsible. It is such accountability that shows that the government truly respects human rights. And I wish to add that that equally confirms that the government is prepared and committed to non-repetition of such violation of rights. The responsibility of government to protect and promote human rights does not absolve citizens of the duty to protect and promote human rights. You have a role to play. That duty begins with the duty to do no harm. Each person has the obligation not to violate any person's human rights. That is a negative duty. It is followed by a positive duty of taking action to promote human rights. You can do this through advocacy. You can do this through reporting cases of abuse. Simple things that you can do, calling for action. Now, business and organizations also have duty to promote and protect human rights. This can be seen clearly in the protection against discrimination on the grounds of race, religion, sex, or belief. They also have a duty to ensure that no one uses their institution or facility to violate any of the human rights. Some, even in the extractive industry, bring security that intimidates the locals and do things. This is not right. You cannot bring people to intimidate others because you want to promote your business. Your business is making gain. You have to find a means of engaging with the community, not by intimidation or harassment. Ancient and venerable social, cultural, and religious institutions have a duty to protect and promote human rights. They cannot use religious or cultural exceptionalism to violate these fundamental human rights. You cannot, in the practice of your own religion, violate the rights of another person. With your own belief, you are imposing certain things on other person and maybe harming them to the extent of even killing them. This is not acceptable at all because these rights are fundamental to the extent that they trump culture and other social practices. Note the decision of the Nigerian Supreme Court in Mojeku versus Mojeku, which nullified an Igbo inheritance practice for being discriminatory against women. And I should also add that you check up Ukeje versus Ukeje. Where to get help when human rights are violated. You now know your rights. You know how they can be violated. How do you get help? It is the obligation of states to protect human rights in Nigeria. Some institutions and agencies have the special responsibility to promote, protect human rights of individuals. For example, it is the responsibility of the security agencies, law enforcement agencies, and government to protect the rights of individuals in the society. Parents, schools, authorities, and guardians have the responsibility to protect rights of children. There are also institutions and organizations in Nigeria responsible for providing relief and remedies to victims, survivors of human rights. Section 46 sub 1 of the Constitution provides that any person who alleges that any of the provisions of this chapter has been, is being, or likely to be contravened in any state in relation to him may apply to a high court in that state for redress. What this is speaking to is that you must not wait for your right to be violated before you take action. You have the right to approach the court, seek an injunction. Example is the normal case of people taking in others, maybe on Friday evening, take them to into police detention so that they will spend days till the next week before they come. You can approach the court when you have an inkling that this is about to happen and seek the protection of your fundamental human rights. And the court can give an injunction in that respect. So redress against human rights can be taken to high courts, it can be taken to National Human Rights Commission, Public Complaints Commission, non-governmental organizations based on human rights cases, Judicial Commission of Inquiry, ECOWAS Court of Justice, National Industrial Court, Lagos Arbitration Center, the police force, social welfare offices. Now, what do you need to do when your right is violated? So you can take some actions. Don't just be docile. Do something. Seek legal redress. Seek legal advice. Get a lawyer. Write a petition to appropriate institutions like the Public Complaints Commission. Engage in social media advocacy and campaigns. Other people will help hype your voice, and the appropriate authorities will come to your rescue. Write a letter to the editor of a local newspaper. Submit complaints to the National Human Rights Commission and other human rights organizations. Now, what is civil liberties? We have finished with fundamental human rights, which we say is connected to natural laws. So they are automatic. The civil liberties are contained in civil rights. They are contained in positive laws that capture what these rights are. So they are not as automatic as you have in terms of the fundamental human rights. Okay? The main thing about civil rights is that we use the terms for rights that flow from positive laws. That is the rights that are created by a statute, including constitutional statutes. Example, in the UK, what are called fundamental human rights are called civil rights or civil liberties. Civil means that they are creations of the state. They are created by the law. The difference between civil rights or liberties and fundamental human rights is that whereas the former are created by positive laws, the latter are natural liberties that are mainly recognized by the Constitution. Fundamental human rights are like the international human rights. They are superior to civil rights to the extent that civil rights can be limited by positive laws, whereas human rights are beyond the limitations of positive laws. In Nigeria, fundamental human rights are in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Now, having taken this, you have heard about fundamental human rights that are automatic, that are inalienable. You have heard about civil liberties that are captured in positive laws. I would love us to go through certain review questions to awaken your mind to see if you have been able to follow through all these discussions. Now, if you are asked, human rights are what? What are they? Are they rights? Are they privileges? Are they entitlements that are inherent in human beings and which accrue to a person simply for being what? One of the following is not a type of human rights. Right to life, right to education, right to freedom of speech, right to kill. Choose one. Which one? From all the discussions, which one is not a type of human right? Now, a human right can be violated, dash. When? When can you violate a human right? Name 5 steps to take when your right is violated. What and what can you do? We have discussed all this, and we are believing that you are armed fully to go all out there and engage positively. You know your rights. You know your duties, your responsibilities, to equally key into the protection and promotion of human rights. Yeah, we have come to the end of this session. I believe that I have been able to effectively take you through this session and that going forward, you are able to, among your friends, in discussions, anywhere you are, talk about human rights, what it means. Talk about the rights as they are contained in our laws, that especially the grand norm, which is the Constitution, how your rights can be infringed upon, what are the importance of human rights, and who you can approach assuming your rights is infringed upon. We are glad to have you, and we are looking forward to your joining us in other sessions. It's still about young persons, young Nigerians engaging effectively with governance issues, and we are glad to have you on this train. You are the future of this nation, so you should be able to know what is happening, what are your rights, and what are your responsibilities. Thank you.